Andrew Barham loves my artwork and always wants to ask me a couple of questions. And his questions are, where did you study art? And more specifically, how did you learn to create the Celtic spirals? Well, I never studied art. I'm a self-taught artist. Study spirals? I don't think you can study spirals. I looked at books by artists like George Bain, how to construct Celtic art, and I think I learned from that mostly. I'm useless at geometry, but for some reason I'm able to put all this stuff together virtually freehand. And Celtic spirals, I suppose if you put a stick in a pond that has a sort of a load of stuff in it, you get a spiral quick enough, and if you observe it, you'll see how they work. With the universal spiral that governs everything from nebulae down to little water streams. So I love all that kind of stuff. And where did I learn the stories for the Book of Conquest and the Silver Arm? The stories, the Book of the Conquest and the Silver, for the Book of Conquests and the Silver Arm, I originally came across in a book called Keating's History of Ireland, in Irish Forest Fiasa Éireann, published by the Irish Text Society about a century ago. And I was lucky enough to get a copy, and that inspired me to look further. And when I looked further, I found the originals of the First Battle of Moytura and the Second Battle of Moytura were studied hugely by German scholars at the end of the last century. And one of them, Father Gustav Lamacher, translated it from Gaelic into German, and I used a German friend of mine to translate it back into English for me, and then I went back to the Gaelic text and fixed it. So I suppose I'm self-taught in that as well. Sean Kelly writes, and thank you, Sean. Jim, I'll summarize what he's saying. He woke up to his own history through my books, and being a Kelly himself, he had his family DNA research and said the Kelly line originated near the Black Sea, near the area of Galicia. Now, Galicia is a Celtic area of Spain, and it was a part of Turkey that was also Galatian. If you read St. Paul's epistle to the Galatians, you'll know what we're talking about. I doubt if the Kellys came from there, but who knows where they came from. We won't go into that one. Anyway, this seems to corroborate with the Book of Invasions. And the question, do you believe the Book of Invasions to be a fictionalized account of factual events? Okay, I don't. I believe it is an actual record of factual events. But I think what has happened is, over the retelling and the retelling, it's become exaggerated beyond any proportion of belief. I think also it records very epic, what's the word for it, the resonant myth, the resonant voice of myth and legend. And I think it also gives a certain amount of truth about the beliefs and the customs of people who came here. Remember, there's 5 invasions mentioned in the Book of Invasions, and they all work out pretty interestingly in terms of historical reality and in terms of actual remains. His last question, which I'd have real trouble with, do I believe all this, the Book of Invasions and all that stuff, was completely made up by Constantine's druids in order to link his family to the Christians' holy bloodline? Now we're into Da Vinci and Dan Brown and all that stuff. Constantine he refers to, I presume, as the Emperor Constantine. Whether he used druids is something I could argue about. And he wanted to link his family to the Christians' holy bloodline, which is the bloodline of Christ. These things are always possible, but I wouldn't be sure why Constantine would need to do that. He used this whole excuse of his vision of the cross after he slaughtered so many Christians, and he used that to drive his army forward and motivate them in a battle where they were completely outnumbered, and then he converted to Christianity, and the rest is history. It'd be nice to think he had druids, though. Paul Tighe. Hi, Paul. Paul says, I first came across your work in Kelp World from Or County Waterford, my God, about 20 years ago. It was impressive work, very similar to your Nuada wallpaper. Nuada wallpaper? Okay. How long would it take such a commission to complete? I presume he's talking about Kelp World. Kelp World was a very interesting idea. They decided that in an area of Ireland where there's possibly no Celts whatsoever and never have been, they would call it Kelp World. Viking World would have been absolutely apt. Norman would have worked perfectly. Cromwell world would have been a wonder world. But Celt world, they decided to put it there. And they built it on top of the old gasworks. The fact that it even existed, I think, is a minor miracle. And of course, my work was throughout it, and I made money out of it, which was wonderful. And then it went bust, which was terrible. But again, I got paid. I don't want to slag the place, but it was pretty fucking awful. Anyway, that's my opinion. Uh, but it was fun. I met many kids who said they went there, their mothers dragged them along there, and they loved every minute of it because I had disembodied heads that were able to speak to the kids because there was a lens in them, and the guy who was operating us was sitting in a room upstairs, and when he wanted to frighten the crap out of somebody, got the head talk. I would have had it dripping blood on the poor unfortunates if I had my way, but there you are. Anyway, thanks, Paul. Anyway, listen, I just want to say thanks for all your questions. I hope I answered them correctly, or at least it made them as interesting as humanly possible, considering I didn't even understand some of them myself. So thanks and goodbye. We'll talk again soon. Bye.